Chapter 650. Bai Minghui's gaze was too direct, and most of the people had noticed that he was looking at Yi Chen. There was no friendliness in that gaze, only battle intent and hostility. Why does it seem like Bai Minghui and Yi Chen have some conflict as well? Strange. Situ Hao and Yi Chen have conflicts, and so do Bai Minghui and Yi Chen. When did Yi Chen fight with them? Plus, I have a feeling that they have all suffered from Yi Chen before. Otherwise, there would be no need for them to be so hostile toward Yi Chen. I have the same feeling as well. One Situ Hao was not that big of a deal, but now there was Bai Minghui. Everyone had started to understand how powerful Yi Chen was. He had managed to make two of the most powerful warriors suffer without anyone knowing. This kind of power was not something normal people could have. Yi Chen could sense Bai Minghui's battle intent, so he smiled lightly and sat on the mountain without getting up. He had realized that Xiao Chuhe had actually gotten the battle intent for Bai Minghui. Obviously, after Bai Minghui had beaten Lin Chaonan, it had affected Xiao Chuhe's status. Yi Chen was the first one to realize that Xiao Chuhe had the battle intent for Bai Minghui, and soon, Bai Wuxia had noticed it as well. Later on, Xiao Chuhe's battle intent exploded out all of a sudden. With him as the center, the air seemed to have stopped moving as that iron blood aura attacked toward Bai Minghui. Xiao Chuhe, you want to challenge me? Bai Minghui took back his gaze from Yi Chen and squinted his eyes, staring at Xiao Chuhe. Xiao Chuhe walked out step by step and said lightly, even if I do not come out to challenge you, you will challenge us in the future. So, I might as well take care of it now. How could he not realize Bai Minghui's ambition? This kind of ambition could only be possessed by people who had increased their power drastically. Xiao Chuhe had had it before as well, but he was very lucky to have beaten Shen Qianlang, one of the top 3 master-level blade artists, which had helped him accumulate a lot of power. Hehe, you are right. This time, I have come to the 9-Dragon Mountain to beat a lot of people. Otherwise, it would be a waste of a great opportunity. Pausing for a second, Bai Minghui continued to say, you guys have been the top 5 young warriors for too long. It is time for you to take a break. Let me be the first one. Being the first one to reach the top would mean a lot. In the future, people would say that Bai Minghui was the first one to break the rule of the top 5 young warriors. Looks like you're very confident, but I like to kill that kind of confidence. Xiao Chuhe's battling style was very calm, but it should not be forgotten that he was a blade artist after all. The aggressiveness of a blade artist was carved into his bones, but it did not mean that he would be calm as well. Flying into the middle of the lake, Bai Minghui took out the long spear on his back and pointed it at Xiao Chuhe. Among the top 3 master-level blade artists, I have already beaten Lin Chaonan. You are next. Are you ready? Hiss. Bai Minghui's attitude had shocked a lot of people. It had been a long time since they had seen someone challenge the top 5 young warriors. It is indeed the Sky Martial region. It is so intense. Li Daoxian and the other 2 had never seen such an intense battle before. The top 5 young warriors were well known to them, but there were still people who dared to challenge them in the Sky Martial region. Thinking about it, they could not help but admire Yi Chen even more. In such an intense place, Yi Chen was still able to survive like a fish in the water. How horrifying was that? He is so bright no matter where he is. Bing Ling sighed, her face full of admiration. When they first arrived in the Sky Martial region, they were like normal people who had just come out to see the world. But right then, Yi Chen's fame had already spread out. He was able to compete with all the top martial geniuses, and even someone as powerful as Bai Minghui seemed to have lost to Yi Chen before. I will start as a normal person then. Yan Qihua tightened his fists, his fighting spirit high. Shoo! Tapping his feet on the ground lightly, Xiao Chuhe arrived in the middle of the lake, right in front of Bai Minghui. Beat me. Then, let me see what you have got. Xiao Chuhe was not arrogant enough to not take out his blade, since his opponent was not a chicken or a dog. If he did not take out his blade, it would only make him lose the upper hand. Therefore, once he arrived, he took out his long blade. The blade was shining with a white light that seemed like flowing water. "All right. Take this." The lake water under his feet exploded all of a sudden as Bai Ming Hui's body shot out like an angry dragon, his spear intent extremely sharp. Silver Dragon 7 Attack. Right from the beginning, Bai Ming Hui wanted to test the waters. When the power gap was not that big, throwing out an ace attack would be very dangerous. Either he would be able to beat his opponent within a second, or he would be dodged by his opponent, who would then use his ace attack to beat him within a second. Although he was very confident in his Sky Bank's second movement, his opponent was still one of the top 5 young warriors, so he could not underestimate him. There were 7 variations in the Silver Dragon 7 attack. As he performed it in his hand, his long spear seemed to have turned into a silver flood dragon, slashing out aggressively. Dang! 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 As one of the top 5 young warriors, Xiao Chuha would naturally not be beaten by the Silver Dragon 7 attack. His body did not move at all as he threw out blade after blade attack. If it were performed by other people, it would look very normal. However, in Xiao Chuha's hands, those normal blade attacks were able to block out the aggressive Silver Dragon 7 attack. After blocking out the last attack, Xiao Chuha suddenly attacked back. His long blade carried an aura that seemed to be able to split the ocean as he threw out a blade attack. Swoosh! The 9-dragon lake could not handle this kind of powerful blade pressure, so it was split into 2. Come on! Dragon Transformation Spear Spell. Bai Ming Hui did not back out, but went forward instead. His long spear shook once, turning into a massive silver dragon that roared into the sky. It shook its head and tail, attacking toward the blade light aggressively. Boom! The blade light and the massive silver dragon clashed together, and the center of the lake was almost flipped over. A huge amount of lake water shot up into the sky, forming a 100-meter thick water column. Ocean Separation. Xiao Chuha cut through the water column with one blade attack, and that white blade light extended out rapidly. It had increased by hundreds of times within a second, and a bright white light shone out. This is indeed not easy to take on. Bai Ming Hui was a bit surprised. He had always heard that Xiao Chuha's battling style was calm and steady. But now, he realized that it was because he was preparing for an explosive attack. It was like the calm ocean, it was quiet most of the time, but once it exploded, even ghosts and gods would be shocked. Dragon Transformation Spear Spell. Dragon Power. Last time when he was battling with Yi Chen, his dragon power had not been completed yet. So, he only had defensive attacks, not attacking ones. The dragon coiling up was also to accumulate power. Boom! Xiao Chuha's blade light landed on that massive silver dragon, which had been wounded badly. It roared into the sky as its body shot into the sky, blowing away that blade light. This Bai Ming Hui is so powerful. Before, when some of the young warriors challenged Xiao Chuha, they would all be defeated within a couple of attacks. But now, it has already been dozens of attacks, and Bai Ming Hui is still not at a disadvantage. Seeing that Bai Ming Hui had blown away that blade light, a lot of people started to discuss. They were all very shocked, since it was their first time seeing someone who was not one of the top 5 young warriors battling against Xiao Chuha. You have improved quite a bit. This dragon power made Yi Chen's eyes light up. Sky Bank. After blowing away Xiao Chuha's blade light, Bai Ming Hui's eyes shone with a bright light as he stabbed out his spear. Most of the people could not even see the spear's trajectory. They only felt that the distance between the two seemed to have shortened in that second. You think that you can beat me with this spear? Xiao Chuha was unbelievably powerful. Without thinking, he threw out a blade attack right at the center of that invisible spear light, cutting it in half. Then, how about this attack? Bai Ming Hui yelled with a low voice as his long spear shook 5 times in the air. 5 twisting silver light beams shot out. It looked very slow, but it was actually because it was so fast that it caused a visual contrast. All of a sudden, the splashes on the surface of the lake seemed to have frozen in time. Xiao Chuha's expression changed drastically. The power of that spear attack was out of his expectation. Although he had heard about the power of the second movement, he had never seen it with his own eyes. That bone-deep sense of danger made Xiao Chuha's eyes turn blood red. He tried to focus his power to the point that everything around him was automatically ignored by him. There were only those 5 silver light beams in his eyes. Ting! 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 No one could describe how fast Xiao Chuha's blade speed was. Each blade attack he threw out was extremely decisive. Normally, when warriors trained on the ocean, they would not try to maintain their blade speed for a long time. But, when a huge wave came, they would have to push their blade speed to its peak within a second. Otherwise, it would not be enough to split the ocean waves open. And Xiao Chuha's blade speed was 10 times faster than the one used to split the ocean waves open. In other words, Xiao Chuha's average blade speed was not the top of the line, at least not as fast as Yi Chen's sword. But, within a second, his blade speed was extremely horrifying. But, the second movement of the sky bank was not that easy to break through. 4 of the 5 silver light beams had been cut in half, and the remaining one landed on Xiao Chuha's left shoulder, blowing him away. A huge amount of blood poured out of the corner of his mouth, dyeing the lake red. Ocean-splitting 3-blade. Just when everyone thought that Xiao Chuha was about to lose, he forcefully stopped himself from backing out. Both of his feet landed heavily on the surface of the lake, bringing up a huge wave. Using the momentum of the wave, he threw out 3-blade attacks in a row. The 3-blade attacks stacked on top of each other, bringing up a huge gale and an undercurrent. The color of the sky suddenly darkened, giving people the feeling that they were in the middle of an ocean where a storm was about to break out, making them feel like they were in the middle of an ocean. Not good. Bai Minghui did not expect Xiao Chuha's counterattack to be this aggressive and sudden. He yelled as he performed his dragon aura again. Crack! The transformed silver dragon had only managed to block out 2 blade lights before the 3rd blade light cut off its head and blew Bai Minghui away. You want to take away the title of the top 5 young warriors? It is still too early. Xiao Chuha stood on top of the waves coldly, his eyes red. In his eyes, it did not matter if it was Bai Minghui or Yi Chen, they were just people with a bit of power who had gotten a bit too much confidence. Right now, they wanted to take the top and take them down. It would just be a joke. The top 5 young warriors had been accepted by everyone through countless battles. Chapter 651. Right then, Xiao Chuha's aura was way too aggressive. His whole body was emitting an aura that made people's hearts skip a beat. That aura was like an army charging out, and even ghosts and gods would have to back out. I did not expect Xiao Chuha to be this powerful after being angered. He is completely different from before. Bai Minghui is indeed powerful as well. He managed to wound Xiao Chuha first. I wonder if he still has the power to battle after this. Everyone was shocked by Xiao Chuha's aura, and they started to discuss quietly. That blade attack that Xiao Chuha had thrown out was unbelievably powerful, and the remaining power had been pressing on Bai Minghui the whole time, bringing his body to shoot out like crazy. It tore open a few miles-long gully on the surface of the lake. When the last bit of power was about to run out, the remaining blade chi continued to attack on Bai Minghui's defensive armor. It seemed like it would not stop until the armor was broken. Bai Minghui had not stopped puking out blood at all. Seeing that the remaining blade chi was still so powerful, he yelled and shook his body. That rich Xin Yuan shattered the blade chi, and the remaining wave spread out in a spherical shape. One could see with naked eyes that there was a huge dent in the lake's surface. Wah! After doing all that, Bai Minghui puked out another mouthful of blood. The spot that had been hit by the blade chi had gone completely numb, losing all connection with the rest of his body. Xiao Chuha won. Yi Chen, who was sitting on top of the mountain, shook his head. Bai Minghui did not have the power to battle anymore. Xiao Chuha's ocean-splitting three-blade had the power to break the ocean, and the blade power was extremely condensed. Even with the defensive armor, it had already cut through some of the meridians in Bai Minghui's chest. Top 5 young warriors. None of them are easy to deal with. Besides the godly shark princess, who he did not know much about, Yi Chen had always thought that Xiao Chuha would be the weakest one among the top 5 young warriors. But now, it seemed like even if Xiao Chuha was not as powerful as Bai Wuxia, he would definitely not be weaker than Xia Hozuan. The battle between him and Lu Xiaoyu might be a tough one. Taking a deep breath, Bai Minghui's pupils shrunk as he stared at Xiao Chuha. His opponent's power was beyond his imagination. To be honest, he had never thought of Xiao Chuha as a threat. He was more afraid of Bai Wuxia and Xia Hozuan, since one of them was extremely well-rounded and flawless, while the other was extremely powerful in both offense and defense. Besides these two, Bai Minghui was not even afraid of Lu Xiaoyu, since Yi Chen was also a sword artist. He would beat the two sooner or later. However, the reality had slapped him hard in the face. Xiao Chuha, who he had been treating the least, had exploded with a battling power that he had never seen before. Although his Sky Bank's second movement was extremely powerful, he had not expected that Xiao Chuha would be able to cut through 4 of the silver light beams and only be hit on the shoulder by the last one. Obviously, one silver light beam would only cause some internal injuries to Xiao Chuha, and it would not even be a serious wound. After all, the top 5 young warriors' defense would not be this weak. It would take more than 2 silver light beams to make them lose their battling power completely. Damn! I was so close. Blue veins popped out on Bai Minghui's forehead. If he could go back in time, he would definitely not underestimate Xiao Chuha. He would use his power that was way beyond his limit to fight with him, and only use the second movement when he was absolutely sure. He was sure that if he had another chance, Xiao Chuha would not be able to cut through 4 of those silver light beams at once. It would already be impressive if he could cut through 3 of them. Unfortunately, there was no such thing as a medicine for regret. Yi Chen did not know what Bai Minghui was thinking, and even if he did, he would only shake his head. The reason why Xiao Chuha was able to beat Bai Minghui was because of his real power, which was something that could not be faked. Therefore, even if they were to fight again, Bai Minghui would still lose. My biggest mistake was underestimating you. Bai Minghui said. Xiao Chuha said lightly, it is not that you underestimated me, but you overestimated yourself. I think you are not the only one who overestimated yourself. In his opinion, Bai Minghui, Situ Hao, and Yi Chen had all overestimated themselves. Alright, I have lost this time. I have nothing else to say. In front of this many people, no matter how thick Bai Minghui's skin was, he could only admit his defeat. As he spoke, his toes touched the surface of the lake and his body flew into the air, landing on a huge tree right next to the 9-dragon lake. After swallowing a pellet, he sat down with his legs crossed. In the middle of the lake, Xiao Chuha glanced at Yi Chen before turning around and flying back to his seat. Bai Minghui lost. The top 5 young warriors are indeed the top 5 young warriors. I am afraid that will not change in the next year. Yi Chen and Bai Minghui's power is still a bit lacking after all. It was not until Bai Minghui admitted it himself that everyone knew the result of the battle. I wonder what kind of level Duguju has reached right now. Someone said suddenly. Tomorrow is the day of the battle. We will know by then. On top of a small hill, Li Daoxian, Yan Qihua, and the other 2 had been watching the battle. Yan Qihua had never seen a powerful blade artist like Xiao Chuha before. Compared to him, those blade artists from the Fire Spirit Palace were like babies who had not learned how to walk yet, and he himself was only learning how to walk. The huge gap had made his blade artist heart even more determined. One day, he would beat a powerful blade artist like this and stand on top of all the other blade artists. Li Daoxian was waiting for Lu Xiaoyu's arrival. The fact that Xiao Chuha had lost to Lu Xiaoyu was known by a lot of people. Therefore, he really wanted to know how powerful Lu Xiaoyu's sword art was, and how it would compare with Yi Chen's. I really hope these two can have a battle. This thought suddenly flashed through Li Daoxuan's mind. He then forced a laugh, thinking that it would not be possible. Yi Chen's opponent was Du Guju, and if it were Lu Xiaoyu, it would still be a bit of a stretch, since the latter was a top sword master who had beaten Xiao Chuha before. On the ranking, besides the old monster sword artist who was ranked second, Lu Xiaoyu would be the leader. Soon, the fourth day had passed. On the morning of the fifth day, today was the day of the battle. The sun had not completely risen yet, but the air-slicing noises from all directions suddenly became more intense. Most of the people who had arrived were the ones who were a bit further away from the Nine-Dragon Mountain, or those who were a bit slower. Among them were some of the most eye-catching people, such as the head of the top 3 blade artists, Xia Beiding, and a white-haired elder right next to him, along with other master-level warriors. The white-haired elder who had come with Xia Beiding was not some random warrior, but an old monster sword artist who was ranked second in the ranking. He was called Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master, and he was at least 150 years old. One was a blade artist ranked 5th, while the other was a sword artist ranked 2nd. The arrival of the two would definitely attract a lot of attention. Brother Xie, since you are praising this battle so much, I am starting to get excited. I want to watch it. Su Yuan chuckled. Xia Beiding said, Brother Su, you will not be disappointed. Alright, since Brother Xie has said so, then I will definitely not be disappointed. Su Yuan was very clear about Xia Beiding's eyesight. He did not come a year ago because with his status, there was no need for him to come. But this time, it was because Xia Beiding had told him that the battle between Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chuha would be at the same level as the battle between them. There would not be too much of a gap between them anymore. As for the battle between Yi Chen and Du Guju, to be honest, they did not care too much about it. Even the top martial geniuses needed time to grow. Therefore, this battle would be centered around Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chuha, while Yi Chen and Du Guju would just be the side dishes. Many people recognized the identity of Su Yuan from the Earth Sword sect, and all of them secretly rejoiced. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword sect had not appeared in front of the public for many years, and he was truly an old monster. It was said that his sword skills had long reached an unimaginable level. Of course, Xia Beiding's status was not any weaker than Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Martial School. Although his ranking was lower than Su Yuan's, the master-level warrior ranking was only for reference, and it had a certain degree of accuracy. If they were to really fight, it would be hard to tell who would be the stronger one. The reason why Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Martial School had stolen his thunder was because Xia Beiding had appeared in front of the crowd more times than Su Yuan, so people had gotten used to it. The morning fog had disappeared completely, and the sun had risen to 1/3 of the sky. People with good eyesight could see that there was a beam of white light flashing in the horizon. Each time it flashed, the distance between them would decrease a lot, as if it was teleporting. Soon, the white light turned into a human figure. It was Lu Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu is finally here. I can't wait. Since Lu Xiaoyu is here first, then his battle with Xiao Chuha will definitely happen first. Actually, I want to see the battle between Yi Chen and Du Guju first. Otherwise, once Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chuha's battle is over, my interest would definitely decrease by half. It was like when one was used to eating good food and suddenly eating something inferior, it would definitely be boring. But, eating the inferior food first and then eating the better food would definitely make the enjoyment longer. Lu Xiaoyu was like a white light dragon as he arrived above the Nine-Dragon Lake within a second. That sharp aura seemed to have cooled down the whole place. What a sword artist! Su Yuan's eyes brightened. At his level, he only needed to sense the other's aura to know his cultivation level. Without a doubt, Lu Xiaoyu had piqued his interest. Lu Xiaoyu. Xiao Chuha stood up, his blade intent aura clashing with Lu Xiaoyu's sword intent aura. The sky above the Nine-Dragon Lake seemed to have changed as countless blade lights and sword shadows appeared. Some of the weaker people suddenly felt a chill all over their bodies. Goosebumps appeared all over their bodies, and their hair stood on end. This included Li Daoxian and Yan Qihua. One of them was a swordsman, and the other a bladesman, so they felt it more deeply than the others. It seems like the two of us will have to battle first. Oh well, let's get it over with and leave as soon as possible. Lu Xiaoyu did not have much interest in watching the battle between Yi Chen and Du Guju, especially when he was waiting. That is exactly what I was thinking. The other battles are just secondary to me. Xiao Chuha's wounds had already recovered. As long as it was not a serious injury, it would not be a problem for him to recover in one night. Let's fight. Lu Xiaoyu's breathing was steady as his eyes started to sharpen. Stretching his body, Xiao Chuha was about to fly out when he suddenly made a noise. He looked into the distance and saw a beam of gray light. It is Du Guju. Du Guju is finally here. Someone yelled out. The gray light flew over at an extremely shocking speed. When it was close to the Nine-Dragon Lake, it let go of its protective Jin Yuan layer and flashed once before appearing in the middle of the lake. Without looking at the others, Du Guju, whose eyes had turned gray, found Yi Chen and looked at him. Sitting on top of the mountain, Yi Chen put away the defensive sword spell manual and lifted his eyes, looking over with an amorous expression. When he sensed her aura, he was a bit surprised and started to think. Who? All of a sudden, a horrifying chi burst out of Du Guju's body. That despairing blade intent pressed down on Yi Chen, who was on the mountain. Under that horrifying blade intent, the people who were standing close to it felt like they had arrived at hell. That despairing emotion started to grow on their faces. Such a horrifying blade intent. Yi Chen did not move, but Xie Beiding did. He released his own blade intent, which clashed with Du Guju's despairing blade intent. What shocked Xie Beiding the most was that the second his blade intent touched Du Guju's blade intent, he felt like there was a surreal Du Guju attacking him with his blade. That despairing blade light filled the air, reflecting in his eyes and making his breathing speed up. Horrifying. Horrifying. Yi Chen will lose for sure. Xie Beiding's body shook as he let go of his blade intent. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Chapter 652. Although the others did not feel it as deeply as Xie Beiding did, they could all see the change in Du Guju. Right then, Du Guju gave people the feeling of a killer from hell. As he walked, that despairing chi covered the whole world, and that horrifying blade intent could even scare ghosts and gods. Interesting. Xiao Chuha's long blade bounced up and down as an interested expression appeared on his face. Du Guju's power was indeed out of his expectation. But of course, it was only out of his expectation. As a master-level blade artist, blade intent alone would not be enough to make him change his expression. Let's see your battle with Yi Chen first. I hope Yi Chen can last a couple of attacks. As his body relaxed, Xiao Chuha knew that his battle with Lu Xiaoyu would have to be delayed. Lu Xiaoyu looked at Du Guju with a bit of surprise as he thought to himself, with only blade intent, Du Guju is already at the forefront. I wonder how powerful he really is. With a powerful blade intent, one's own power would not be weak. But, it could not be the only thing to measure one's power. The power was all about the warrior's overall performance. Besides the most important things like cultivation, willpower, profound sense, and other things that could be improved through training, it would also require battle experience and talent. Shoo! A white light flashed once as Lu Xiaoyu flew to the lakeside. Facing such a negative blade intent, Yi Chen did not change his expression as he said, "Duguju, if you want to use your blade intent to threaten me, I am afraid you will be very disappointed." Indeed. Duguju put away his despairing blade intent. Among all of the young martial geniuses on this true spirit continent, perhaps only Yi Chen was someone that he could not see through. He had already guessed this result, but no matter what, he had to give it a try. Only after trying would he be able to make a decision. How could there be such a horrifying blade intent? It almost made me lose control of my mind. Me too. All of the people who were watching the battle had pale faces as they looked at Duguju with fear. This guy is indeed a top martial genius. Once he reaches the life and death realm, he will be a very horrifying king warrior. Perhaps, he will become the second evil king. Su Yuan praised. Xia Baiting said, if he can reach the life and death realm, he will not be any weaker than Evil King. I think he will walk on another path. Evil King had reached the life and death realm 50 years ago, and was also a famous martial genius. If it were not for Xian Ho, then he would be the #1 martial genius of this continent in 1,000 years. Yeah. Su Yuan nodded and continued to say, the little girl from the Dantai family is also known as a top martial genius. I wonder if this Yi Chen's title is true or not. Indeed, Yi Chen's speed of increasing his cultivation could be considered as a top martial genius. But, it was still not as impressive as Duguju and Dantai Mingyue. The former two had been showing off their top martial geniuses since they were young, and had never disappointed anyone. Therefore, being a top martial genius was both an honor and a pressure. Su Yuan did not have high hopes for Yi Chen, since it was not easy to reach the level of a top martial genius. Maintaining it for a short period of time was nothing, but maintaining it for a long period of time would be truly horrifying. Duguju and Dantai Mingyue had already been through it. I am afraid that Yi Chen will lose. Duguju's change had shocked Xia Baiting. Originally, he was quite optimistic about Yi Chen, since Yi Chen was from a small South River region, which was a very low starting point. Therefore, it was even more valuable. However, Duguju was still able to explode with a huge amount of power even though he was not as powerful as the others. This was what it meant to be a top martial genius. Top martial geniuses would always be able to do the impossible. Let's postpone our battle for a bit. Unexpectedly, Duguju did not start the battle with Yi Chen right away. Meanwhile, Yi Chen acted like it was natural, as if he had already known about it. Turning around, Duguju looked at Xiao Chuha. Xiao Chuha, you and I are both blade artists. Among the blade artists, there can only be one #1. Therefore, you will lose under my blade for sure. As he spoke, he then said to Yi Chen, I will fight with you as the #1 blade artist. I hope you will not disappoint me. The others had taken the top 5 young warriors as their targets, but Duguju had taken Yi Chen as his lifetime rival. Only Yi Chen could threaten him, the others were only temporary. Once Duguju said that, everyone was shocked. Was it arrogance, or was it confidence in his power? Without a doubt, compared to Duguju, even Bai Minghui was not as powerful. Before his battle with Xiao Chuha, although Bai Minghui sounded a bit arrogant, it still gave everyone the feeling that he was afraid of Xiao Chuha. But now that Duguju had said it, it was as if he was even more powerful than Xiao Chuha. You are too arrogant. Xiao Chuha obviously did not expect that Duguju would challenge him first. But, it was not important. What was important was that the latter's tone had completely pissed him off. He was one of the top 5 young warriors, and he had been through hundreds of battles. It was the first time he had been treated as someone who could be easily killed. Alright, I will wait for you. Yi Chen's reply was very normal, without any arrogance. But, it still made a lot of people look at each other. Duguju had said that Xiao Chuha would definitely lose under his blade, and Yi Chen had said that he would wait for Duguju. Even an idiot could tell that Yi Chen was implying that after he beat Xiao Chuha, Yi Chen would wait for Duguju to battle with him. Obviously, beating Xiao Chuha would not surprise Yi Chen at all. Xiao Chuha had already shown his horrifying power before, and if Duguju could beat Xiao Chuha, then Yi Chen would definitely know how horrifying Duguju was. Under such circumstances, he still dared to say that he would wait for him, which made a lot of people suspicious. Arrogant. Lu Xiaoyu said with a low voice. No one knew if he was talking about Duguju or Yi Chen. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master frowned as he forced a smile and said to Xia Baiting, young people nowadays do not know how to be humble anymore. See. Things will come to an end eventually. Xia Baiting touched the handle of his blade. Under the stares of a lot of people, Yi Chen lowered his head, looking very calm. Of course, he would not say those words out of arrogance. To be honest, if Duguju could not beat Xiao Chuha, then he would not have the power to fight with him at all. Chin. Taking out his long blade, the tip of the blade pointed at Xiao Chuha as Duguju yelled, "Let's fight." Shoo. Xiao Chuha's feet stomped on the ground, and like an exploding wave, he arrived above the Nine-Dragon Lake within a second, right in front of Duguju. Bai Minghui had said this to me before, but he had lost. I will still say the same thing. If you want to challenge us, you are still too early. Suppressing his anger, Xiao Chuha said with a low voice. Whether I am early or not, you will find out soon enough. Alright then, I would like to see what kind of power you have. In the battle with Bai Minghui, Xiao Chuha had waited until the end of the battle to finish the battle. But right now, that horrifying aura of an army was coming out of Xiao Chuha's body, and his eyes started to turn red. A lot of people knew that Xiao Chuha had been pissed off, and he would use all of his power right from the start. Very good. Duguju nodded satisfactorily. Lose. That long blade with a white light was taken out of its scabbard as Xiao Chuha held the blade with both of his hands. He threw out an attack from the sky, and that white blade light increased by hundreds of times, looking like a sky blade. The surface of the lake could not handle that powerful blade pressure, and a straight line was formed. All of the lake water within that line was turned into mist. Dang! With a wave of his long blade, that incoming blade light was blown away while Duguju himself did not move an inch. He said lightly, Xiao Chuha, since I have the confidence to beat you, then I naturally have my reasons. This blade attack is too weak. Bring out all of your power. Gasp. The sound of people gasping was heard one after another. Although that blade attack from Xiao Chuha was not a killing attack, it was extremely fast in that split second. Since that blade attack from Duguju was not a killing attack as well, it was obvious that Duguju had the upper hand in the first attack. Awoo! Xiao Chuha yelled as his body carried that extremely sharp blade light as he shot out, throwing out 49 blade attacks toward Duguju. Each blade attack contained a blade aura that could split the ocean. With his power as one of the top 5 young warriors, if it were someone else, they would have been scared before the battle had even started. Unfortunately, his opponent was Duguju. Squinting his eyes slightly, the long blade in Duguju's hand shot out a white-colored blade light. Within that blade light, the images of all living beings appeared on it. That despairing chi spread out everywhere. Different from before, this despairing chi did not only affect one's mental state, but also affected Duguju's body. In that kind of despair, Duguju's power became even more powerful. Some of them would lose their will to fight in that despair and become like the walking dead. But some of them would explode with power that they had never seen before. Even if it was just a normal blade attack, it would have the power to kill everything in its path. With the despairing blade intent, Duguju had been in closed-up training for half a year in the evil demon cave, so he had learned more about the power of despair. Not only did he need to make his enemies feel despair, he also needed to make himself feel the threat of despair. Only by being under the threat of despair all the time would he be able to perform his despairing blade intent to its limit. Dang! 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 Countless blade lights clashed together, and the battle between Duguju and Xiao Chuha reached its climax. The battle between the two was extremely dangerous. One could only see the blade light flying everywhere, and the white light shining everywhere. It was impossible to see the two's figures clearly, as if they had already been merged by the blade light. Using the despairing blade intent as the path of the blade art, Yi Chen studied the battle and thought to himself. Everyone was walking on a different path. Some people would use the sword as a weapon, which was actually no different from a normal warrior, while some would use the sword art to learn the profound. There would be a small group of people who had the attributed sword intent who would use it as their main path, such as the Double Sword King, the Iron Sword King, and even the Battle King. Most of their martial arts were created with the attributed sword intent as the core. For example, the Double Sword King had the Slaughter Sword intent. Although his martial arts were no different from the others, and contained the same profound, people would be able to sense the killing aura in his martial arts. They were created purely for killing, and contained their own characteristics. Since Yi Chen had inherited their attributed sword intent, he could not be more familiar with it. However, Yi Chen was different from all of them. He was walking on the pure sword art, and the so-called profound and sword intent were all for the sword in his hand. Of course, the sword in his hand did not refer to a specific sword, but rather his sword artist's heart. As long as the sword artist's heart did not die, he would not stop moving forward. He would use the sword in his hand to break through all the obstacles. He gradually realized that the sword intent was derived from the sword, or it could be said that it was derived from the heart of a swordsman. Without the sword, without the heart of a swordsman, it was impossible to derive the sword intent. The source of the sword intent was oneself, the sword. What he wanted to walk on was the pure sword principle, the upright sword principle, which would not change. Chapter 653. The power that came out of desperation was just way too powerful. Even though Xiao Chuha had already used all of his power and was even slightly more powerful than before, he still could not get the upper hand at all. He was completely suppressed by Du Gujue and had to back out 3,000 meters, his blade art starting to get messed up. Damn! Xiao Chuha was furious. Both of his eyes were bloodshot as his whole body used the power of that long blade attack to jump back into the air, throwing out a blade attack at Duguju in front of him. You have been covered by despair. There is nowhere to run. Duguju looked cold as his gray pupils shone with an emotionless light. Xiao Chuha's figure was reflected in his eyes, almost drowned by the gray background. Dang! Lifting up his right arm, he threw out another blade attack. Xiao Chuha backed out hundreds of meters again, and the clothes on his body had been torn apart, revealing the defensive armor underneath. The despairing blade art is indeed powerful. Although Yi Chen had not chosen the path of developing his sword art based on the attributed sword intent, he did not deny it either. There was an advantage to using the despairing blade intent as the path, which was that the initial growth would be extremely fast. His power would increase exponentially, and the higher his understanding of despair, the more power he would be able to explode. Plus, because of the despairing aura, all of the blade attacks created would have the despairing element, which would be extremely coordinated. It would be able to bring out all of the power within the despair. Meanwhile, Yi Chen's sword art was very inclusive. It was calm and peaceful, and its growth was neither fast nor slow. However, it was very stable, and could be controlled 100%. Therefore, it was still too early to talk about which path would be better. But, one thing was for sure, Yi Chen had not chosen the path of the Battle King or the Iron Sword King. As for the Dual Sword King, it was even more impossible, since he had chosen his own sword art. Dang! 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 Bright sparks exploded in the air like bright fireworks. Wherever Duguju went, Xiao Chuha would back out. Right then, most of the people could tell that Xiao Chuha had been completely suppressed, and the chance of him turning the situation around would be very slim. Among the people watching the battle, one of them shook his head and sighed, "It is not that Xiao Chuha is weak, it is that Duguju is too powerful." Compared to 1 year ago, his power has increased by at least a couple of times, while Xiao Chuha's improvement is not more than 30%. Therefore, Xiao Chuha will lose for sure. Ah! The top 5 young warriors are finally going to change. Duguju is indeed a top martial genius. Even Xiao Chuha would have to make way for him. When a veteran powerhouse meets a new monster, the new monster will always be stronger. Before coming here, no one would have thought that Duguju would be able to beat Xiao Chuha and become the first one to make it to the top. They all thought that even if it was a top martial genius, it would still take time to grow, and they thought that within 1 or 2 years, it would still be the top 5 young warriors. Unfortunately, they had forgotten that the reason why the top martial geniuses were top martial geniuses was not something that could be predicted with common sense. Plus, when the top martial geniuses met their opponents, they would explode with even more power. And for Duguju, Yi Chen was without a doubt his catalyst. Of course, there were still people who thought highly of Xiao Chuha. One of them said, "Don't forget that Xiao Chuha still has his ace attack, the ocean-splitting 3-blade attack. Even if Bai Minghui loses to that attack, Duguju might not be able to handle it." Yeah. Xiao Chuha's ocean-splitting 3-blade attack might be able to beat Duguju. People who supported Duguju argued back, "Don't you forget that Duguju still has his despair blade. 1 year ago, he could not control it completely. What about now? Just wait and see." Boom! The surface of the 9-Dragon Lake had been shattered by the battle between the 2 top blade masters. Ocean-splitting 3-blade attack. Finally, Xiao Chuha performed his ace attack. His whole body stepped on the wave, looking down from above as he threw out 3-blade attacks toward Duguju. The 3 massive blade lights stacked on top of each other, bringing about a drastic change in the weather of the 9-Dragon Mountain. The wind started to howl, and the undercurrent started to rise. "You have the right to make me perform my despair blade attack." The despairing chi on Duguju's body suddenly increased by a couple of times as a cold wind spread out. Meanwhile, his hair had turned gray as well. In the depth of his left eye, a white flame was burning. Whoever was stared at by that eye would feel like they had arrived at hell, where countless evil spirits appeared out of nowhere and attacked their souls. Shoo! The space in front of him started to blur, and Duguju's body disappeared from where he was standing. Crack! The blade light that Xiao Chuha had thrown out shattered like a bubble. Soon, a ghost-like shadow appeared in front of Xiao Chuha and threw out a blade attack. Without any suspense, under Duguju's despair blade attack, all Xiao Chuha had to face was despair. His protective Zhen Yuan was no tougher than a piece of tofu, and it had been sliced in half. The next second, that cold blade power traveled through his armor and into his body before coming out from his back. That invisible blade pressure had sunk a blade mark into the lake's surface behind him. Pooh! A huge amount of blood spurted out of Xiao Chuha's mouth, forming a blood column. He had wanted to dodge, but his body was not listening to him. It seemed like he did not want to lose to Duguju, so he somehow managed to bring out a new power from his despair, wanting to throw out a blade attack at Duguju who was right in front of him. Unfortunately, Duguju was even faster than him. Another blade attack landed on his body, blowing him into the lake and making him flip a couple of times. He had completely lost his fighting power and fighting spirit. Drawing power from despair. "You will never be able to compete with me." If it were someone else, Xiao Chuha might have been able to turn the situation around. But unfortunately, it was Duguju who would not be able to do that, because his understanding of despair was way beyond people's imagination. Therefore, Xiao Chuha's last move was just like a trapped beast trying to fight back. Xiao Chuha lost. Xiao Chuha really lost. It has been almost 5 years, right? After 5 years, a top young warrior has finally fallen. Although they had already thought that Xiao Chuha would lose, when the result came out, most of them were still shocked. Even someone as powerful as Xiao Chuha had lost to Duguju's blade. It was not hard to imagine how powerful Duguju was. Perhaps no one under 40 years old could beat Duguju. Even Bai Wuxia might not be able to do it. So powerful. Bai Minghui dared to challenge Xiao Chuha, but he realized that he would rather challenge someone else than Duguju. Drawing power from despair and making his opponent fall into despair, even if it were someone with the same power as Duguju, 99% of the time, they would lose. Sick. Situ Hao was also very scared of Duguju. Making his opponent lose the chance to turn the situation around would make one's scalp go numb. Brother Xie, how confident are you in battling him? Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master suddenly asked Xie Baiting. Xie Baiting forced a smile and said, if it were another blade artist with the same power as him, then it would be 50-50. But against him, it would be 40-60 at most. 40 for me, 60 for him. It seems like there will not be much to see from now on. Su Yuan nodded. Chapter 654. Even Li Daoxian, Yan Qihua, and Bing Ling, who came from the same place as Yi Chen, felt that Yi Chen did not have much of a chance. It was not that Yi Chen was weak, but that Duguju was just too powerful. One blade, he had beaten Xiao Chuha, who was one of the top 5 young warriors, to the point that he could not even fight back. This kind of power had already surpassed the top 5 young warriors. Even if it were by Wuxia, he would not have much of a chance to win against him, not to mention Yi Chen. Bai Wuxia looked at Duguju with a serious expression. He shook his head and did not say anything. Ting! Lu Xiaoyou's sword kept vibrating, letting out a clear sword hum. The second Duguju beat Xiao Chuha, the sword hum reached its peak, almost flying out of its scabbard. Ah, we have all underestimated Duguju. Who knew that he would grow to this level within a year? Right now, not to mention Yi Chen, no one under the age of 40 could beat him. Hai Wuya looked at Yi Chen and sighed. Yan Fengfeng said, the final battle has not started yet. Perhaps there will be a chance. Let's hope so. Hai Wuya moved his gaze away and looked at Yi Chen. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Chen stood up. A heavy wind blew past, causing his blue robe to float in the air. His long black hair danced in the air like ink. Duguju, you have the right to challenge me now. The first sentence that Yi Chen said after standing up had caused a huge commotion. Did I hear it right? Some people thought that they had heard it wrong. I have the right to challenge you. Duguju squinted his eyes. He was different from the others. If it were someone else who said this, he would not care about it at all. But, what Yi Chen said had given him a strong sense of danger. It was like a great sword was about to be pulled out of its scabbard. This is Yi Chen. Lu Xiaoyu frowned. Xiao Chuha had lost to Duguju, so there was nothing for him to do today. He knew that he did not have that much confidence in fighting against Duguju, which was undeniable. But, he and Yi Chen were both sword artists, so what Yi Chen said was obviously way too arrogant. Yi Chen, today is the day of your duel with Duguju. However, I would like to know what level your sword art has reached. Yi Chen nodded, sure, let's decide the winner in 3 moves. Alright, let's limit it to 3 moves. Stretching his body, Lu Xiaoyu soared into the sky like a white dragon, flying towards Yi Chen at an extreme speed. Before he arrived, a sharp sword qi had already pierced through the air. Lu Xiaoyu and Yi Chen want to fight too. Many people were surprised. Sky Kill Sword Art. Lu Xiaoyou's sword art could only be described in 3 words, fast, brutal, and accurate. And, the most powerful attack would be his Sky Kill Sword Art. Once performed, the space seemed to have shrunk, just like Xia Hozuan and Yi Chen's void-shattering finger art, which could ignore the distance between them. However, the Sky Kill Sword Art did not contain the space profound, but the profound of wind. The wind was everywhere, and so was the sky kill sword art. Lu Xiaoyu waved out his sword, and all of the wind turned into sword qi, attacking toward Yi Chen. No wonder Xiao Chuha had lost to him before. Yi Chen's expression changed, not daring to take it lightly. Since the two were limited to 3 attacks, it was obvious that it was not a real battle of life and death. Therefore, losing one move was still a loss. Taking out his long sword, Yi Chen took a deep breath and took a step forward. Something strange happened. Yi Chen's soul seemed to have left his body as he walked out of his body. He threw out a sword attack toward that sword qi. Then, he changed his step art, and another Yi Chen walked out, waving his sword toward the sky as well. 3. 5. 7. Within that second, Yi Chen had taken 7 steps, turning into 7 Yi Chens. Although they were waving their swords in an orderly manner, it gave people the feeling that there were 7 Yi Chens waving swords at the same time. Pooh! 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 The sword qi disappeared completely, and the space twisted a bit. Such a fast sword. Everyone watching the battle was shocked by Yi Chen's sword art. They could not help but open their eyes wide. Sky-slaying sword. Lu Xiaoyu's expression changed as the Zhen Yuan inside his body burst out and poured into his long sword. A sword artist's Zhen Yuan had always been pure, not to mention that Lu Xiaoyu's cultivation base was already at the peak of late Sea of Soul's realm. As a huge amount of Zhen Yuan poured in, the sharp longsword in his hand seemed to twist like a beam of twisted light. His hand grabbed onto the end of the light tightly as he stabbed toward Yi Chen. Pop! This sword stab seemed to have broken through some kind of barrier. The mountain peak where Yi Chen was at started to twist. At first glance, it seemed like there was a mirror there, and it could shatter at any moment. Being inside the mirror, Yi Chen would not be able to escape. Breaking the space is not that far away. Su Yuan knew how powerful this sword attack was. Normally, only life and death realm warriors could break the space. But of course, life and death realm warriors were way too powerful. Even a normal punch would be able to shatter the space, not to mention life and death realm warriors. Below life and death realm, even the half-step king warriors would have the power to break the space. However, if they wanted to escape into the surreal space, it would still be a long way off. As for warriors below the half-step king warrior level, no one had ever heard of anyone being able to break the space. But this sword attack of Lu Xiaoyu was able to twist the space like a mirror. Thunder devour. Silver lightning gathered at the tip of the sword. Yi Chen did not back out at all as he threw out a sword attack. A perfect thunderball appeared out of nowhere. Boom! The space started to shake, and the sky suddenly turned bright blue. Under this intense light, Yi Chen and Lu Xiaoyu looked like 2 twisted shadows that could be torn apart at any second. All right. I indeed did not expect that your power had already reached this level. I admit that I have underestimated you. Everyone in the world has underestimated you. Lu Xiaoyu had been shaken by that exploding thunderball. He almost puked out a mouthful of blood. That sword attack of his had only touched the edge of breaking the space, and was still far away from actually breaking it. The space was not like a mirror, and it was not that fragile. Even though it looked like it was about to shatter, it could actually handle a couple times more power than before. So, this step was extremely difficult. So powerful. Xiao Chuha's face was pale as a complicated look flashed through his eyes. While he was still immersed in the battle between the top 5 young warriors, Du Guju and Yi Chen had already caught up and even surpassed him. It was a huge blow to him, and it had denied him everything. The third attack, let me do it. Yi Chen did not care about the explosion. His body shook once, and that vague shadow disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already right next to Lu Xiaoyu. Spiritual sword attack. 3 consecutive slashes. The spiritual sword attack was extremely fast, leaving only a flash of light. Ting! Ting! Shoo! Lu Xiaoyu's sword was indeed fast, blocking out Yi Chen's first two sword attacks. However, he could not handle the third one anymore. It was not because he was not fast enough, but because he could not grasp the timing. Without that, as long as his sword speed was not faster than Yi Chen's, he would lose. His right arm went cold, and Lu Xiaoyu was blown away. Standing in the air quietly, that burning blue light had not disappeared yet. Yi Chen said lightly, 3 attacks have passed. Lu Xiaoyu looked at the sword mark on his right arm, his face full of shock. What? Su Yuan had not expected this at all, so he looked at Xie Baiting with shock. The two exchanged a look, not knowing what to say. Xie Baiting opened his mouth a couple of times as if he wanted to say something, and then closed it again. In the end, he said, I am getting old. My eyes are getting worse. I could not even see through a young man's power. Su Yuan said bitterly, it is not that we are getting worse. It is just that this young man is way too talented. He has been keeping a low profile, and no one knows how powerful he is. First, Dugu Ju had beaten Xiao Chuha, and then, Yi Chen, who was not expected to win, had beaten Lu Xiaoyu. 2 of the top 5 young warriors had fallen one after another. The former was still okay, since everyone had already recognized him from the beginning. But, the latter was basically not expected. They only thought that after Dugu Ju had beaten Xiao Chuha, there would be nothing to see anymore. In their minds, no matter how powerful Yi Chen was, he would not be as powerful as the top 5 young warriors. Reality told them, Dugu Ju was a monster. Yi Chen was also a monster. Within 1 year, Dugu Ju's power could increase by a couple of times, and so could Yi Chen. There was nothing that he could not do. No wonder he said that Dugu Ju has the right to challenge him. Someone suddenly realized. It is still hard to say right now. We will have to see how the battle between him and Dugu Ju turns out. But, it is a bit more interesting now. Luckily, I did not leave. Monster against monster. This is the top battle. After beating Lu Xiaoyu with 3 attacks, no one dared to underestimate Yi Chen anymore. They all calmly waited for the battle between Dugu Ju and Yi Chen. If one had to ask who was the most emotional, it would naturally be Li Daoxian and the other 2. They felt like they were in a dream, their mouths slightly open. Yi Chen's brilliance was too dazzling, so much so that they felt like they did not know Yi Chen at all. The Yi Chen of the past was no longer the Yi Chen in front of them. And the Yi Chen in front of them was the real Yi Chen. I didn't misjudge you. You are my real opponent. Dugu Ju was slightly different, but he soon revealed an excited expression. What top 5 young warriors? What Blade Dao master? None of that mattered. He had already surpassed those that he should have surpassed, and the one that he had yet to surpass was still Yi Chen. Let's fight. After warming up, Yi Chen's blood started to boil. A destructive sword intent exploded, and the sky suddenly turned dark. It was as if they had arrived in a dark starry sky. There were signs of destruction everywhere. If one's mind was weak, they would not even have the courage to pick up their weapons and fight. Dugu Ju's blade intent made people feel despair, but Yi Chen's sword intent was suppressing Dugu Ju's blade intent, not giving it any chance to fight back. The place where Yi Chen was at was like a sword domain. Thousands of sword intents pointed to hell. Although despair can't do anything to you, it can give me power. Dugu Ju knew that he would not be able to do anything to Yi Chen in terms of willpower. So, he could only let himself be in despair and absorb power. His body flashed once as Dugu Ju held his blade with both of his hands. His blade intent was pushed to its limit, and he threw out a blade attack at Yi Chen with extreme power. Xiao Chuha realized bitterly that this blade attack from Dugu Ju was even more powerful than when he was battling with him. It was obvious that he had not used all of his power yet. Chapter 655. Dang! Dazzling sparks burst forth, lighting up the sky. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chen swung his sword at the weak point of the long saber, bouncing Du Guju away, causing his opponent's follow-up attack to end in vain. The moment Du Guju was bounced away, he immediately knew that the situation was not good. He did not expect Yi Chen's observation and accuracy to have reached the acme of perfection. His saber was extremely fast, but his opponent was still able to find the weak point of his long saber and hit it in one strike. It was as if he was the one who sent himself to the saber. The long saber danced, impenetrable. For the first time, Du Guju switched from offense to defense. The next moment, thousands of sparks burst forth from Du Guju's body. Yi Chen's sword was like the most terrifying venomous snake. Once it found an opportunity, it would launch a fatal attack, not giving his opponent the slightest chance. When the spectators saw that Du Guju was suppressed right from the start, they felt a little breathless. Without exchanging blows with Yi Chen, there was no way they would know how powerful he was. At first, Du Guju thought that his saber speed was fast enough and his saber force was strong enough to compete with Yi Chen. He might even be able to suppress his opponent. But now, he knew that he was wrong. Not only was his opponent's sword speed and sword force not inferior to his, the scariest thing was that even though both of their speed and strength were similar, he was the one who was forced to retreat. He had a feeling of not being able to unleash his full strength. One of them changed from offense to defense, while the other changed from counterattack to all-out attack. The process could only be described as a flash of lightning. The spectators could only see the proof of their exchange from the sparks. Otherwise, they would have thought that the two of them did not even touch each other. Ding 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 ding, Du Guju's defense was flawless. Even Yi Chen was unable to break through it. However, Yi Chen could weaken his defense. Every strike landed on the weak point of his saber. Although there were too many strikes, it was not very accurate. But out of 10 strikes, he would succeed at least 5 to 6 times. Like spinning silk from a cocoon, Du Guju's saber-light defense became thinner and thinner. He was very clear that under Yi Chen's fierce attacks, his saber speed was starting to slow down. If this continued, when his saber speed slowed down by half a beat, his defense would be broken. Ah! All of a sudden, that despairing chi on Du Guju's body increased again. A white flame burned in the depth of his left eye, and his hair turned gray as well. That thinner saber-light defense started to increase at a visible speed, steadily blocking out Yi Chen's incoming attack. Not only that, once his saber-light defense reached a new level, Du Guju shook his wrist, and that saber-light defense disappeared completely. It turned into a bright saber-light attacking toward Yi Chen. It was indeed the despairing saber attack, a different kind of despairing saber attack. Yi Chen had been through hundreds of battles, and he had never failed in terms of technique. This time, it was the same. He held his sword with both of his hands, attacking on that saber light. That golden pattern spread out in all directions. Boom! Yi Chen had only backed out dozens of steps, and his body's center of gravity had not changed at all. Just this alone showed that he was a couple of times more powerful than Xiao Chuha. If Du Guju's saber power was extremely powerful, then Yi Chen's sword art would be unpredictable. This was everyone's first impression, since that blade attack was way too sudden and horrifying. However, even in that kind of situation, Yi Chen was still able to block it out. After getting the upper hand with that blade attack, Du Guju did not stop attacking. He threw out dozens of blade attacks toward Yi Chen, and each one of them looked like a white rainbow. Blocking out one blade attack was not that scary, but to block out dozens of them would be almost impossible. Even Xiao Chuha could not block out the real despairing saber attack, and right now, it only had about 1/3 of its power. After hundreds of blade attacks, normal defense would not be able to handle it at all. What a powerful power! Yi Chen could sense that Du Guju's blade speed and power had reached a whole new level, and its attacking power had increased drastically. Each blade attack was just like a normal ace attack. If he wanted to defend against it, he would have to use his ace attacks, which would be the only way out. Who? 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 The long sword was waved in the air. With Yi Chen as the starting point, circles of golden pattern spread out, blocking out the incoming white blade light one after another. What? Consecutive ace attacks? Du Guju was shocked, and his blade attack could not help but pause for a second. Although his despairing blade attack was an ace attack, it was different from normal ace attacks. It was based on his own body, and there was nothing special about the blade attack. Therefore, it could be performed continuously. Of course, performing it too fast would weaken the blade power. But, it did not matter. Even if it only had 1/3 of its power, with enough of it, it would still be more powerful than 100% despairing blade attack. However, Yi Chen's ace attacks had cancelled out this attack completely. Thunder Devour. The sword momentum changed. Yi Chen's figure rushed forward, and he waved his sword to release a perfect thunderball. The thunderball triggered a circle of space ripples, and instantly appeared in front of Du Guju. Break! Du Guju's eyes were burning with a white flame, and he slashed the thunderball with his blade. Only when the Thunder Devour was in a perfect state could it burst out with the greatest destructive power. After being slashed in half, it could not even exert 1/10 of its power. Du Guju's blade attack could be said to have displayed the blade's speed and power to the fullest. Otherwise, if he was just a little bit slower, the thunderball would have exploded in an instant. These two are actually strong to such a degree. There were at least 20 or 30 experts who came to watch the battle. They sadly found that since the beginning of the battle, the strength that Du Guju and Yi Chen had displayed was enough to kill them in a second. Just a random blade light and sword shadow could cut them in half. An unprecedented battle between the young generation. Elder Gao Changtian of the Pavilion Master had come as well. The development of Du Guju and Yi Chen was beyond his expectation. These two were 28 years old, and the other was 26 years old. Their ages were almost the same, but their power had surpassed that of the young generation. Peerless Proud Pair. Someone blurted out the name without thinking. Peerless Proud Pair, this is a good description. The people next to him pondered for a while, and they felt that it was a good description for Du Guju and Yi Chen. Just like that, the Peerless Proud Pair had become a unique term for Du Guju and Yi Chen. As for Dan Tai Mingyue, although she was also known as a monster, she was a woman after all, and it was a bit awkward for her to be called a Peerless Proud Pair with a man. Besides, not many people knew about Dan Tai Mingyue's real power. 3 consecutive cuts. Yi Chen activated his sword steps. His body turned into a beam of sword light, moving around without a fixed direction. The long sword in his hand was either cutting, stabbing, or cutting, aiming right at Du Guju's weak spot. Du Guju was most afraid of close combat with Yi Chen, since it required a lot of skills. His skills were already scary enough, but Yi Chen was even better. Before, Lu Xiaoyu, who had a great sword art, had been defeated by Yi Chen's spiritual sword 3 consecutive cuts. The strong sense of danger had pushed Du Guju's reflexes to the limit. He blocked out Yi Chen's last cut, but that sharp sword chi had still taken away a piece of his sleeve. Despairing Fox. Taking 3 steps back, Du Guju's long gray hair danced in the air. He threw out a demonic fox phantom in the air. The demonic fox looked ferocious with its sharp teeth all over its body. It opened its mouth and tried to swallow Yi Chen. Explode! A thunderball was thrown into the demonic fox phantom's mouth. Boom! The demonic fox phantom exploded into pieces, and the electric shock wave spread out in all directions. Alright, that's enough. Yi Chen suddenly increased his speed. He used his dragon power on his arm and poured his Jin Yuan into his longsword. He then threw out an extremely fast sword attack at Du Guju. This sword attack was so fast that it looked like an illusion. So fast. Am I going to lose? Du Guju was suddenly filled with despair. However, it was different from before. This despair was brought to him by Yi Chen, and not by himself. It had to be said that Yi Chen had still underestimated the power of despair. Despair could make one's potential burst out instantly. Du Guju felt like he was back in the evil demon cave again. Dang! At that critical moment, Du Guju saw the sword's trajectory and threw out his blade to meet it. A huge spark spread out in a sphere, and a huge fireball appeared between the two. You can even block it like this? Close combat was Yi Chen's strongest power. He could not only use his extraordinary skills, but also have the dragon power. In other words, unless Du Guju's defense was like Xia Hozuan's, who had swallowed a Blood Emperor battle spirit pellet, he would not be able to block out this sword attack at all. But, Du Guju was not Xia Hozuan after all. The despair had increased his five senses to a whole new level, allowing him to see the sword's trajectory. The power of despair has its limit. Yi Chen's hands were covered by a layer of white dragon bone defense as he held onto his sword tightly. He threw out one sword attack after another at Du Guju. Each time he threw out a sword attack, the space would twist a little. The whole space was like a mirror, reflecting the two's figures. Du Guju's physical power was not low either, which was about 300,000 pounds. Half of it was his own power, and the other half was from training some of the spirit plants that could increase his power. After all, it was not just the dragon blood plant that could increase chi power. It was just that the dragon blood plant had the best effect. Dang! 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 Balls of fireballs exploded as Du Guju backed out while Yi Chen continued to attack. Finally, both of Du Guju's arms went numb, and he was stabbed in the shoulder by Yi Chen. That sharp sword power traveled through the defense armor and landed on the inside of Du Guju's shoulder. Boom! Du Guju puked out a huge amount of blood as his body was blown backward. Because of the extreme speed, circles of pattern appeared in front of him. Du Guju has lost. Just how powerful is this Yi Chen? This is unbelievable. Even Du Guju could not stop Yi Chen. We have all made a wrong estimation. Monstrous, monstrous. Du Guju is monstrous enough, but Yi Chen is even more monstrous. Everyone felt that Du Guju was strong enough, so strong that it was terrifying. However, such a strong Du Guju still couldn't stop Yi Chen. This caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Yi Chen, who had fully displayed his strength, made everyone feel what it meant to be unstoppable for the first time. Despair. At this moment, Du Guju, who was flying backward, suddenly shouted. He used all the strength in his body, as well as the hidden potential in the depths of his heart, and slashed out with his blade. When this blade slashed out, the boundless and terrifying blade light instantly shattered, turning into a gray light pillar with a diameter of several hundred meters, sweeping towards Yi Chen. Within the gray light pillar, one could vaguely see the shadows of countless people, and the cries of ghosts and gods could be heard. You can't block this blade. After the blade slashed out, Du Guju didn't even have the strength to control his body. The eerie white flames in his eyes also dissipated into nothingness. In his sight, the gray light column was about to devour Yi Chen at a lightning-fast speed. Dodging it was already impossible. The spectators clearly didn't expect that Du Guju would have an even more terrifying killing move. All of their mouths were wide open. The so-called instant reversal was nothing more than this. Chapter 656. The power of the gray light beam locked onto Yi Chen, making the space around Yi Chen seem to be frozen. Not to mention escaping, he couldn't even move. Under this blade attack, there was only one way to escape, and that was to fight back with an attack. There was no second way. It would be impossible for Yi Chen to not be shocked, but after the shock, his expression returned to normal. Originally, he hadn't planned to reveal his most powerful attack, the Gold Fury. It wasn't a life and death battle, and it wouldn't be wise to reveal his most powerful attack. As the saying went, one more trump card meant one more chance to save his life, and after using it, the effect would be halved. But now, he had to use it. Gold Fury. Feeling the terrifying blade pressure coming towards him, Yi Chen lowered his center of gravity and held his sword with both hands. He raised it up high and then slashed down with all his might. Boom! The golden ripples twisted and elongated, like the traces left behind by a large ship passing by on a lake. In front of the golden ripples was a perfect arc. The arc was like a side blade, following the gaps, cutting through the gray light pillar. The hundreds of meters thick and thousands of meters long gray light beam was cut open in an instant. The power dissipated, causing the two halves of the gray light beam to scatter and fill the entire sky. In the middle of the sky, there was a smear of gold. It was this smear of gold that had split the gray sky in half, like yin and yang. After the gray light disappeared, everyone opened their eyes and looked towards the battlefield. On the Nine-Dragon Lake, a shallow mark was disappearing. Following the mark, everyone found Duguju. Right now, Duguju was in a very bad shape. His body had crashed into the lake, creating a huge pit that was several meters wide and dozens of meters deep. Duguju was lying in the middle of the pit, covered in mud, and his hair was wet. The armor on his chest had caved in, and the light was dim. Seeing Duguju's current state, gasping sounds could be heard everywhere. No one had expected that Duguju, who was about to make a comeback, would end up like this. The power of that last blade attack had made every single one of them feel a trace of despair. Depending on the distance, the degree of despair would be different. But, without a doubt, that blade attack of Duguju's had the destructive power to instantly kill a group of experts. They had thought that Duguju would be able to turn the tables, but the result was the opposite. Arg! Duguju spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. He tried to raise his eyes and look towards the sky. In his sight, Yi Chen, who was dressed in blue, was standing high in the sky. His long sword was already sheathed, and his long black hair was fluttering in the wind. At the same time, everyone's eyes fell on Yi Chen. Compared to Duguju, Yi Chen was unscathed. Those who were observant could see that there were no traces of his clothes being torn. In other words, in this battle, Yi Chen had completely suppressed Duguju. Even when Duguju fell, Yi Chen didn't feel the slightest threat. This is too scary. Even someone as strong as Duguju didn't have a chance to fight back against Yi Chen. Duguju can absorb the power of despair, but Yi Chen has already surpassed despair. Everyone was discussing. Although they couldn't see the details clearly, they could tell that Duguju was completely defeated by Yi Chen in every aspect. In terms of experience, Yi Chen wasn't lacking. In terms of battle techniques, Yi Chen had a complete advantage. Every time Duguju used the Despair Blade to increase his battle power, it would be neutralized by Yi Chen's sword and hit his weak spot. Many people sighed in their hearts. It was a tragedy for Duguju to encounter Yi Chen. If it was someone else who was as strong as Yi Chen, even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't have lost so badly. In the hands of Yi Chen, Duguju was being suppressed from the beginning until the end, and he didn't have his own rhythm. This is Yi Chen. Li Daoxian and the other two hadn't seen Yi Chen for about 2 years. They originally thought that even if Yi Chen's strength was very high, it wouldn't be enough to surprise them. After all, they had already been shocked countless times. But now, they still couldn't help but exclaim. If it was a few years ago, they could still see Yi Chen's back. Now, they couldn't even see his shadow. All they could see were the traces and glory he left behind. Absolute strength can disregard everything. Bai Wuxia glanced at Duguju and murmured to himself. Being able to make Bai Wuxia mention the absolute power would not be easy at all. The so-called absolute power was not the level of cultivation. Otherwise, only the surreal king would have the right to talk about the absolute power, because he was the number one warrior of the whole true spirit continent. In Bai Wuxia's eyes, the absolute power was the highest standard of power evaluation. For normal people, only the profound and will power would be qualified. But, the power was not that important. Being able to use all of it would be the most important. When the power difference was not that big, the profound and will power could be ignored. What would be left would be the quality, battle talent, and understanding of battling. Being powerful in every aspect would be the absolute power. Among the same level warriors, they would be invincible. It was like a wooden bucket. If there was no shortcut, the bucket would be complete and could be filled with water. But if there was a shortcut, the water would not be able to be filled, and there would always be some loss. Bai Wuxia was very clear that the reason he was able to become the leader of the top 5 young warriors was not because of his great talent or comprehensive ability. The others were not weaker than him, but in terms of absolute power, he was more powerful than the others. Even if it was Duguju, he could still see some flaws. But, with the appearance of Yi Chen, he had realized for the first time that Yi Chen's absolute power was even more powerful than his. Of course, everyone had to move forward. Although his absolute power was similar to Yi Chen's, in terms of potential, he had almost reached his limit. The chance of him reaching the life and death realm in this lifetime was not that big. On the other hand, Duguju might be able to reach the life and death realm. This was the difference in potential. Between the same level, it was about the absolute power. In a lifetime, it was about the potential. The higher the potential, the faster the power would increase. This is so embarrassing. Let's go. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword School looked embarrassed. Before, he and Xia Baiting were not talking loudly, but they were not being secretive either. So, there would definitely be people nearby who could hear them. And now, Yi Chen had won without any suspense. No matter how thick his skin was, he could not help but feel a bit embarrassed. Shoo! Shoo! The 2 seniors left the 9-Dragon Mountain first. Su Yuan and Xia Baiting's departure did not attract much attention. Most of the people's attention was on Duguju and Yi Chen. Putting a pellet into his mouth, Duguju activated his martial art to refine part of the medicinal power. Only then did he manage to stand up with difficulty, wobbling in the middle of the huge pit. Yi Chen, Duguju, have never lost before in my generation. You are the first one to beat me. Duguju took a deep breath and said slowly. Hearing this, the crowd was even more shocked. Before, because they were too excited, they did not think too much. But after Duguju's reminder, they all recalled Duguju's achievements. Duguju had shown his monstrous talent since he was young. He had fought thousands of battles, big and small, but he had never lost once. The only times he had a draw were against the other monstrous talent, Dan Tai Mingyue. Other than Dan Tai Mingyue, Duguju had always had the last laugh. And Yi Chen had broken Duguju's record of winning all the time. He was also the first person to officially beat Duguju. Most importantly, both of them were monstrous talents, but they were also each other's stepping stones. When one fell, the other would rise to glory. In the first battle, the winner was Yi Chen. In the sky, Yi Chen said, among the same generation, I have never met a worthy opponent either. It was a simple sentence, but it shocked a lot of people. They did not know if Yi Chen meant it on purpose, because this sentence included Duguju as well. In other words, until now, Yi Chen had not lost even once, even if his opponent was Duguju. On an unremarkable little mountain, Li Daoxian sighed and said, he has never been defeated before. In the past, he was somewhat lucky to have not been defeated. Now, he is undefeated because of the general trend. In the same generation, there is no one who can defeat him. Not losing when one was weak depended on luck. For example, when Yi Chen was still at the condensing reality realm or clasping Yuan realm, he would most likely lose when he came to the Sky Martial region. As he became more and more powerful, the luck factor gradually disappeared. Without luck, among the same generation, there was no one who could beat him. Against an undefeated opponent, one of them will definitely lose. Too bad, I lost. A bitter look appeared on Duguju's face. It was his first time losing, so it would be impossible to say that he did not have any negative emotions. But, this loss seemed to have unlocked some kind of shackle for him, making him feel relaxed. From now on, he would be even more motivated. Before, he was trying to not lose, but now, he was trying to beat Yi Chen. The former was for himself, and the latter was also for himself. Everyone will face failure eventually. Wait for me in front. Standing up straight, Duguju's chi was very weak, but his aura did not decrease. Instead, it increased. A wave of blade intent that was full of explosive power exploded out, seeming like it was going to break and rise again. Everyone was shocked. In their eyes, Duguju seemed to be even more powerful than before. Could it be that there was no limit to his potential? Good Duguju, good Yi Chen. The elder of the pavilion, Gao Changtian, laughed out loud. The annual ranking list would be updated next month. Gao Changtian was in charge of the young generation, but this time, it was not the young generation that was in the limelight, but 2 young warriors. Of course, the young generation was also included in the list, and Gao Changtian was in charge of it as well. Duguju, although you have lost to Yi Chen, according to the current information, you have the right to be in the top 5, maybe even higher. Gao Changtian said. Huh. If Duguju is in the top 5, wouldn't that mean that Xie Baiting will be squeezed out? Someone looked confused. Gao Changtian could tell that everyone was confused, so he said, the ranking changes every year. After this, Duguju will only get stronger. Therefore, there should be no problem for him to be in the top 5. Then, Gao Changtian turned his head and looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen, if I am not wrong, this year's ranking will be either number 1 or number 2. What? Gao Changtian's words stunned everyone present. The number 2 was still acceptable, but the number 1 was the head elder of the Void Martial School, the head of the 9 great martial institutions. People called him the Axe Master. With 2 words as his title, one could imagine how powerful he was. Normally, many people would want to have 2 words as their title, such as the Sword Master, the Blade Master, or the Spear Master. Unfortunately, there were only a few who could have 2 words as their title, because the meaning behind it was extraordinary. It meant that one was the absolute number 1 in a certain field. The Axe Master was the number 1 among all the Axe Masters, and no one could surpass him. Little brother, I will give you a title. I wonder if you dare to accept it. Gao Changtian ignored the other's expressions and said with a smile. Oh, what title? Yi Chen asked. Sword Master. Chapter 657. Gao Changtian's words had shocked everyone. Even Yan Fengfeng and Hai Wuya frowned, knowing that it would not be easy to be called the Sword Master. Sword Master. Yi Chen was shocked. There were a lot of master-level warriors in the world. Some of them used weapons, such as blades, spears, swords, whips, hammers, staffs, axes, and so on. Some of them were bare-handed and specialized in their palms, fists, or kicks. The number 1 in each area would have the right to fight for the title, such as Blade Master, Spear Master, Axe Master, Head Master, Fist Master, and Leg Master. But, it was undeniable that among all of them, the Sword Master and Blade Master were the hardest to get, because most of them were sword or blade users. Even so, there were not that many who could get the title, and there were less than 5 of them in the whole True Spirit continent. As a matter of fact, it was not that there was no first place among Sword Masters and Saber Masters. If there was a battle of life and death, the first and second place would definitely be decided. However, no one dared to call themselves Sword Master or Saber Master because once they used this title, it meant that they looked down on others and would have to face challenges again and again. If the gap was not big, it was very likely that they would be defeated and become a joke. Therefore, without an absolute advantage, no one dared to call themselves Sword Master or Saber Master. If they wanted to use it, sure, but they would have to beat the others to admit their title. Of course, even if they did, it would only be temporary. Once someone thought that they could challenge you, they would come again. In other words, the title of Sword Master was not only a huge honor, but also a huge trouble. After all, if you could beat all of the master-level warriors in the world, there would always be people who would not accept it. You would then become the #1 target of all the master-level warriors in the world. Yi Chen said, "Sword Master, it is indeed a big temptation, but you still cannot give me this title." Gao Changtian laughed, "Of course, I cannot represent everyone in the world. But, I have the right to give someone a title. As for whether you can keep this title or not, it has nothing to do with me. Plus, I am only asking if you dare to take it or not. If you do not, then just pretend that I did not say anything." With Yi Chen's personality, he wouldn't be so reckless. Li Daoxian had some understanding of Yi Chen. In his opinion, Yi Chen wouldn't take this hot potato. Yan Qihua and Bing Ling nodded slightly. They didn't think that Yi Chen would do that either. "Alright, since you asked me if I dare or not, then why wouldn't I dare? From today onwards, the title of Sword Master belongs to me." Yi Chen's eyes flashed with sharpness as he sternly said. "Oh." Gao Changtian was shocked. Although he was the one who suggested this title, he didn't think that Yi Chen would dare to accept the title of Sword Master. Moreover, he did it so naturally and without a trace of fear, as if this decision was nothing to him. Too arrogant. Although it's true that Yi Chen is strong, the title of Sword Master isn't something he can become just because he wants to. Just wait and see, he won't be able to keep it for long. The title of Sword Master hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. Maybe in a few years, Yi Chen will have the right to become Sword Master, but not now. Indeed, it's not hard to obtain the title of Sword Master, but it's hard to keep it. Once you lose it, you will become the laughing stock of the world. At this moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Those who supported Yi Chen couldn't help but frown. Their impression of Yi Chen was greatly reduced. Most people thought that Yi Chen was young and frivolous, accepting the title after being tempted by Gao Changtian. After all, the title of Sword Master was a supreme honor to all sword users in the world. Who wouldn't want to become a Sword Master? But without strength, it would be arrogance. Defeating Dugaju didn't mean that he was better than all the other sword users in the world. Li Daoxian and the other two were shocked. They thought that they had some understanding of Yi Chen, but it seemed like they knew far less about Yi Chen. This. Did I hear it wrong? Hai Wuya mumbled to himself. Yan Fengfeng thought about it, we were all wrong about him. This is the real Yi Chen. Unable to get rid of the temptation of fame after all. A cold light flashed through Lu Xiaoyou's eyes. His title was the Sword Master, but there was a Ji in between, so it was not the real Sword Master. He sneered inwardly at Yi Chen for daring to accept the title. On the side, Bai Wuxia shook his head, I don't think so. Hearing him, Lu Xiaoyu looked over at Bai Wuxia. Bai Wuxia said slowly, people who are not powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are arrogant. However, people who are powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are courageous. Without a doubt, Yi Chen already has the power. Even compared to those old sword artists who are over 250 years old and are not in the master-level warrior ranking, he would not be any weaker. Calling himself Sword Master in this kind of situation would require a lot of courage that normal people would not have. If he did not dare to accept the title of Sword Master, then it would be disappointing, because he would be afraid that he would not be able to keep the title, afraid that he would fail. Therefore, his heart of sword art would not be pure and flawless. As for fame and fortune, everyone would have it. If one could not face the fame and fortune, then he would not be able to face himself. Lu Xiaoyu, I can see that your sword art is slightly unstable because of Yi Chen's appearance. Lu Xiaoyu was speechless. No one knew that he had lost to Bai Wuxia before. He was the only one who knew about Bai Wuxia's power. When Bai Wuxia and Xia Hozuan battled, only he could tell that Bai Wuxia had not used all of his power yet. Crazy. He dares to accept the title of Swordmaster. Bai Minghui could not help but shiver. If he can keep the title, then I will not be his enemy from now on. Situ Hao's expression changed a couple of times as he thought to himself. Yi Chen, you better take back the title of Sword Master. Right now, you do not have the power to take it. As the voice was heard, 3 human figures flew out. They were the Fire Sword Master, who was ranked 29, 33, and the Shadow Sword Master, who was ranked 45. Among the 72 people on the ranking, there were dozens of them who used swords. Yi Chen said lightly, I am the Sword Master. Why would I not dare to take it? The Shadow Sword Master took out his long sword and said, since that is the case, do you dare to take 10 attacks from us? If you do not lose within 10 attacks, then we will admit that you are the Sword Master. Fighting 3 against 1, it would naturally be unfair. Therefore, the Shadow Sword Master decided to limit it to 10 attacks. With that, no one there would object to it, since it was not a battle, but a test to see if Yi Chen had the power to be the Sword Master. If he did, then it would be normal for him to not lose within 10 attacks. No need to go through all this trouble. If I cannot beat you within 10 attacks, then I will forget about the Sword Master title. Arrogant. The Fire Sword Master yelled out as he threw out a burning sword chi attack toward Yi Chen. Broken Sword 33 movement. Illusion Sword Spell. The Shattering Sword Master and the Shadow Sword Master both threw out their ace attacks as well. Sword Step. Yi Chen's body was like a sword light, traveling between the interweaving sword chi. The sword light flashed once, and all of the attacks missed. They could not even touch Yi Chen's protective Zhen Yuan layer at all. First attack. Yi Chen's first target was the Shattering Sword Master who was the closest to him. He shook his wrist, and that gentle sword wind was about to attack him. Back out. The Fire Sword Master caught up. His red longsword drew out a cross in the air. As long as Yi Chen did not back out, even if he managed to beat the Shattering Sword Master, he would still have to take 1 sword attack from him. Naturally, he would be at a disadvantage. 1 against 3 was not that easy. Not being at a disadvantage was even more difficult, since when the 3 of them attacked each other, there would be 3 attacks. As long as 1 was hit, 1 would be at a disadvantage. This was different from a life and death battle. There was no fairness or unfairness here. However, he had obviously underestimated Yi Chen. Taking back his longsword, Yi Chen jumped back. While he was in the air, his sword body shone with silver lightning. The lightning quickly gathered into a thunderball and shot out. Not good. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master backed out quickly and threw out their ace attacks toward the thunderball. Boom! A huge shockwave with electricity spread out. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master were both blown out backward, puking out a huge mouthful of blood. Phantom Formless Sword. Right then, the shadow-like Shadow Sword Master suddenly attacked. Dozens of invisible sword chi attacked toward Yi Chen. Boom 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 boom, Yi Chen was already prepared for the Shadow Sword Master. Within a second, he threw out dozens of sword attacks. Dozens of golden ripples spread out, destroying the Shadow Sword Master's sword chi and covering his opponent within. Pooh! The Shadow Sword Master was blown out as well. 3 sword attacks, 1 fake and 2 real. The 3 master-level swordsmen were defeated in a row. In fact, Yi Chen did not need to spend so much effort. He only needed to use his gold fury, and he would be able to beat the three easily even from a long distance. However, the three of them were quite far away from each other, and they were not gathered together. Using the gold fury would still require 3 attacks, which would be pointless. Plus, these 3 were not qualified enough for him to use his gold fury. Flying out for hundreds of meters, the Fire Sword Master's face was pale. He could not believe it. The 3 of them combined could not even block out 3 sword attacks from Yi Chen. If it was one-on-one, even if his personal power was doubled, he would still be killed within seconds. There would be no hope at all. I admit that you are the Sword Master, but only the 3 of us admit it. The Fire Sword Master took a deep breath and said. The Shadow Sword Master had blood on the corner of his mouth. We admit it, but it does not mean that those master-level swordsmen admit it. You have to know that the second-ranked master-level swordsman is Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. As far as I know, there is another Sky Sword Master, who is even stronger than Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. However, he is already over 250 years old, so he is not on the ranking. Aside from him, some of the famous master-level swordsmen have not come out for a long time, including the Demon Sword Master, the Blood Sword Master, and the Evil Sword Master. Tu Yuan from the Shattering Sword Master opened his mouth. Yi Chen, it will be hard for you to keep the title of Sword Master. Maybe those master-level swordsmen don't care about the glory of the ranking, but they have to care about the title of Sword Master. As long as one uses a sword, no one would care about it. Yi Chen said, since I dare to call myself the Sword Master, I have already prepared for the challenges. They don't dare to call themselves Sword Master, but I, Yi Chen, dare to. If your so-called Sky Sword Master, Demon Sword Master, or Blood Sword Master dare to challenge me, I will give them the title of Sword Master. They don't dare, but I do. Gao Changtian laughed, thinking to himself, this time, it is Sword Master, and next, it will be Blade Master. I hope Duguju will not disappoint me. I think the leader will not blame me either. The ranking only includes warriors under 250 years old, which is really ridiculous. Either we don't create a ranking, or we do. As long as one has the power, he or she will be able to make it. Unfortunately, it will not be possible for the next few competitions. Gao Changtian had not suggested that warriors over 250 years old should not be included in the ranking, since it would lose half of its meaning. A lot of people knew that there were still some powerful warriors over 250 years old. Although it would disturb their training, what would be the point of fighting? As for the body being too old to handle it, it would be a joke. Once one reached the Sea of Souls realm, they would have already left the realm of mortals. As long as they were not dead yet, their stamina would not decrease that much. Plus, they would have more experience, which would give them an advantage over the younger generation. Chapter 658. Hearing Yi Chen's words and Gao Changtian's attitude, some of the people became quiet. Indeed, the title of Sword Master needed someone to take it. If no one dared to take it, then there would never be a Sword Master. Yi Chen taking the title was not as simple as they thought. But of course, there were only a few people who could think that way. Most of the people did not agree with Yi Chen, thinking that within a couple of months, Yi Chen would become the joke of the world and a lesson for all the young people. Yi Chen, the battle between us is not over yet. We will fight again if fate allows it. Duguju did not set a time limit, since it would not make any difference anymore, since the competition between him and Yi Chen would not last for a day or two. If he could catch up to Yi Chen, then there would naturally be a battle. If he could not, then everything would just be empty talk. On the other hand, if Yi Chen did not have enough power, then the result would be the same. What he did not expect was that when he and Yi Chen battled again, it would already be many years later. As Duguju left, more and more people started to leave. Before they left, a lot of people suddenly realized that the reason why the Nine-Dragon Lake was so crowded was because Wuxia and Xia Hozuan had battled here a year ago. This year, there was also Duguju and Yi Chen. What about next year? Let's go. Bai Wuxia and Lu Xiaoyu left right after them. Yi Chen, we will catch up when we have time. Hai Wuya and Yan Fengfeng said goodbye to Yi Chen before leaving as well. All of a sudden, the Nine-Dragon Lake went from being crowded to being quiet. Everything had its downfall after reaching the peak. It was inevitable. Li Daoxian and the other two arrived at the hill where Yi Chen was. Li Daoxian chuckled, Yi Chen, long time no see. Yi Chen smiled, indeed, long time no see. Time flies. Time flies, and looks get older. Luckily, we are all at the Sea of Souls realm. Even if we meet again in decades, nothing will change. Yi Chen smiled. Time was merciless, but it was also invincible. Only by cultivating could one preserve the most precious time, even if it was only a few short decades. Thinking back, when Yi Chen met Li Daoxian and the others in the competition of the Hidden Dragon rank, it was 8 years ago. At that time, they were still young and inexperienced, but they were still very young. 8 years had passed in a flash, and Yi Chen could not help but sigh at how fast time had passed. 8 years have passed. My appearance hasn't changed, but my heart has. No matter what, I'm still very happy to have met you, Yi Chen. Your appearance has brought us earth-shattering changes. The one who spoke was Yan Qihua. 8 years ago, he definitely wouldn't have said this, because he was young and full of vigor. He couldn't allow himself to fail. But after 8 years, his mentality had changed, and the way he viewed things had also changed. The appearance of Yi Chen didn't silence them. Instead, it made them erupt with even greater potential. Brother Yan is right. But besides your appearance, the only thing that hasn't changed is that you are still so bright. We should call you the Sword Master now. Bing Ling smiled, which was rare to see, like an ice flower blooming. Forcing a smile, Yi Chen asked, you guys plan to stay in the Sky Martial region for a while? Indeed. We have just arrived in the Sky Martial region, and it is a bit strange. We plan to explore a bit. Li Daoxian nodded. Yi Chen said, Hai Wuya, Yan Fengfeng, and the rest are not bad. If you run into them, just tell them that they are my friends. As for me, I will go back to the South Rudra region first. All right. The three did not reject. Traveling outside, the more friends, the better. Then, I will go now. You guys be careful. Waving his hand, the flying puppet was thrown into the air. Yi Chen flipped and sat on it, turning into a beam of light and disappearing into the sky. We are here, and he is gone. Li Daoxian sighed and looked away. For the three of them, the Sky Martial region was still very strange, and it was a new starting point. But for Yi Chen, there was nothing worth staying in the Sky Martial region anymore. He had everything he needed. On the way back to the South Rudra region, in the sky above the Turtle Mountain, shoo! A beam of light broke through the sky, its speed extremely fast. Yi Chen, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Right then, a human figure flew into the sky, blocking in front of the flying puppet. It was a man wearing gold robes and a gold crown. Who else could it be but Xia Hozuan? The flying puppet flapped its wings, turning the momentum into resistance as it slowly slowed down. On the back of the flying puppet, Yi Chen stood up and stared at Xia Hozuan. If I have guessed it right, you have already trained your void-shattering finger art to completion. Otherwise, you would not dare to challenge me. The void-shattering finger was a low-rank profound sense martial art, and because it contained the space profound, it was much more powerful than normal mid-rank profound sense martial arts. Right now, Yi Chen had trained it to 90% completion, which was only one step away from completion. But of course, this step would be the hardest as well. Without the basic understanding of the space profound, it would be very hard to make any progress. You have guessed it right. Therefore, you have to lose. Xia Hozuan's eyes shone with a gold light, looking extremely powerful. Yi Chen shook his head. Before, you still had a bit of hope. But now, you have no hope at all, because you do not dare to challenge me in front of everyone. That is also why you are blocking me here. What a joke. How arrogant. Xia Hozuan's expression turned cold. Alright, since you are this confident, then bring it on. Yi Chen put away his flying puppet and placed his hand on his sword. Shooting star finger. Xia Hozuan did not want to waste time with Yi Chen either, so he immediately used his best attack, shooting star finger. After half a year of closed-up training, besides his space profound, Xia Hozuan's starlight profound had also improved a lot. Right then, the shooting star finger in his hand was no different from a real meteor shower. Waves of them shot out, covering the entire sky. Break! Taking out his thunder disaster sword, Yi Chen held it with both of his hands and threw out a sword attack. That powerful sword aura covered up the stars, seeming unstoppable. Rumble! A huge chunk of the shooting star shower was shattered, and that massive sword chi cut out a black path in the middle of the shower. The black path extended all the way towards Xia Hozuan. This sword aura. Xia Hozuan looked confused as he pointed out his finger and shattered the sword chi. Gold pattern. Yi Chen flew over, his clothes fluttering in the wind like a god. He threw out another sword attack, and that aggressive gold pattern spread out at an extreme speed. Impossible. How could his sword aura be this powerful? Xia Hozuan had to throw out 3 attacks before he managed to tear apart the gold pattern. That powerful exploding power had forced him back out dozens of steps. Nothing is impossible. Right now, I have the title of Sword Master, and my mental chi has been changing slowly, forming a great power. You, on the other hand, have always been hiding like a coward. Right now, all you are relying on is your completed void-shattering finger art. Other than that, you have nothing else. After accepting the title of Sword Master, Yi Chen somehow felt that he had become more powerful. It was not just his outer appearance, but his inner heart. Perhaps he could not bring out his inner power directly, but it would allow Yi Chen's every move to have that kind of power. It would be like the sun rising and setting, the black and white alternating, and the winter coming and going. On the other hand, Xia Hozuan had been affected by Yi Chen's sword aura, so he was already at a disadvantage. Perhaps he could bring out 100% of his power, but he would not be able to break through his limit and bring out 110% of his power. In a battle between powerful warriors, even the smallest difference would be magnified. Xia Hozuan's inner heart was not powerful enough, which was why Yi Chen's power had made him lose his cool. Sword Master title. Don't be ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Do you think anyone can get the title? In front of me, you are not even worth mentioning. Xia Hozuan roared as his whole body shone with a gold light, looking like a golden sun rising up. He looked down from above, pointing out a sharp finger at Yi Chen. Behind him, a king warrior shadow appeared. It was extremely powerful, and the whole sky seemed to have frozen. You are no longer my opponent, and you will not be in the future. Thunder devour. Yi Chen shot into the sky, flying even higher than Xia Hozuan. His long black hair danced in the air without any wind, and that sharp sword chi surrounded his body, shattering the frozen chi field around him. He yelled with a low voice, seeming like the master of all swords. Millions of thunder and lightning gathered at the tip of the sword as he threw out a sword attack. Crack! The silver thunder ball was like a lightning punishment from the sky, leaving a crystal silver trail in the air. The end of the trail was aimed right at Xia Hozuan. Boom! Boom! Su King's finger power had been shattered, and Xia Hozuan was blown away. That king warrior shadow behind him seemed to be something that had been imprinted in the mirror. As the mirror was shattered, the king warrior shadow twisted a little before disappearing completely. Xia Hozuan had been affected by the chi flow, and he could not help but puke out a small mouthful of blood. Damn! Void-shattering finger. Xia Hozuan was extremely frustrated. He was planning to get closer to Yi Chen before performing his void-shattering finger art. But right now, he could not even get close to Yi Chen. Yi Chen's sword chi was extremely powerful, and with one sword attack, even the surreal space had been shaken, making his chi and blood boil. Shoo! The gold-colored void-shattering finger power ignored the distance between them, appearing right in front of Yi Chen within a second. Under that unstoppable finger power, the sword aura that Yi Chen had created had been shattered as well. He had to admit that the void-shattering finger was indeed powerful beyond his expectation. If it were another profound sense martial art that was similar in power, Xia Hozuan would not be this powerful. Circles of gold pattern spread out. The void-shattering finger power entered the pattern, but it did not dissipate. Instead, it was extremely condensed. But, the spreading nature of the pattern had increased the resistance of the void-shattering finger power. So, it was dragged to the side and shot past Yi Chen's body. Spiritual sword. Turning his body in the air, Yi Chen looked like a swift bird flying in the sky. He shook his wrist, and that silver mark landed on Xia Hozuan's chest. Chin. Sparks flew everywhere as Xia Hozuan was blown backward. You have dodged my void-shattering finger. But, it does not matter. I already have a semi-extreme rank armor, so you will not be able to hurt me. Xia Hozuan was a bit surprised, but he soon laughed out loud. The semi-extreme rank armor he was wearing had come from a great master, and with it, his defense would increase by at least 50%. Added with the powerful defense profound sense martial art, it would be more than enough to cancel out 70 to 80% of Yi Chen's sword chi. As for the remaining 20 to 30%, it would be impressive if there was even 5% left. Gold Fury. Yi Chen's expression did not change as he threw out his long sword. That twisted gold pattern stretched out endlessly, landing on Xia Hozuan's semi-extreme rank armor again. Crack! A metal exploding sound was heard, and Xia Hozuan looked like he had swallowed a goose egg. His eyes popped out, and blood poured out from all of his orifices. Hoo! Hoo! A strong wind blew out as Xia Hozuan was blown backward, landing heavily on a 9,000 meters tall mountain, shattering half of it. Isn't this Yi Chen and Xia Hozuan? Xia Hozuan has lost so badly. Inside the Turtle Mountain, a Sea of Souls realm warrior who was passing by looked surprised. I am so lucky to be able to see this. A lot of people would not know that Xia Hozuan had lost to Yi Chen. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.